In 1995, and I remember it personally very well, Prime Minister Rabin was assassinated. He was assassinated by a Jewish extremist. This Jewish extremist was just one person, of course, but he was incited along with many others. And who was doing the major incitement at that time? Who actually had the blood on his hands? It was Prime Minister, then not then Prime Minister Netanyahu, but Netanyahu, who soon thereafter became Prime Minister and was inciting against any peace, any agreement, depicting in various propaganda posters, depicting Rabin, who was a general already from 1948 and a highly respected, rather conservative Labour Party member, depicting him as a Nazi officer, using all the imagery that triggers the Israeli public, and eventually somebody showed up and shot him. The people who are now in government with Netanyahu, people like Ben-Gvir and Smotrich, who have a great deal of power in the government. In fact, Netanyahu can't do anything right now if they don't agree to it, because if they leave his coalition, the coalition will collapse and he may end up in jail because he's under indictment for very severe corruption. What do those people want? Now, if you look at what they want, they are a mirror image of Hamas. And that's something that people don't like talking about. These people, the type of religious Zionism that they represent, this is not about all religious Zionists, of course, but the kind of people that they represent, the settler movement there, the roots, Ben-Gvir's roots in Kahana, who was declared as a racist, a fascist by the Israeli Supreme Court, and his admiration for Kahana. What they want is to create a halachic, that is a religious Jewish state in all of historic Palestine, and to have as few Palestinians there as possible. And they are talking right now, as we speak, about ethnic cleansing of the Gaza Strip, and they are actively operating right now in the West Bank, where since October 7th, well over 300 Palestinians have been killed, in trying to persuade the population that it might be safer for them to move to the other side of the Jordan. They want that. Now, does all the Israeli public support it? No, of course not. Do all the Palestinians support Hamas? I don't think so. But these are mirror images of each other. If you go back to before October 7th, what the Netanyahu government was trying to do since February 2023 was to erode the power of the legislator, of the judiciary, of the court. And the cause for that, the cause for that so-called judicial overhaul, which was really an attempt at the judicial coup, which just yesterday the Israeli Supreme Court ruled on, not in favor of the Netanyahu government. What it was about the occupation. It was about removing the last bastion of legality to annexing the West Bank. And so what we see here is not only that Hamas took over a large part of the Palestinian population, but that in Israel, the takeover by these types of fundamentalist settler movement is eroding democracy in Israel. It's eroding many other things, not just democracy. It's about civil rights. It's about gay rights. It's about any connections between Jews and non-Jews. It's about defining who are Jews. These are people who are very, very extreme and are trying to change the face of Jewish Israeli society. And so we have them reflecting each other. This is what I'm trying to say.
Understood. And excuse me for interrupting, but I just have to ask, because Israel is a democracy, I don't know how it is that the tail is wagging the dog. Is it really the tail? Are these really extremists in the sense of being a numerical, small, tiny population, or do they not give voice to something that resonates more deeply in the psyche of the polity. Otherwise, they wouldn't have the power that they have. What's wrong with what I just said?
So in part they do. In part they do. And I would say that that too is a reflection of a sort of ongoing process. You can follow Israeli politics and you will see what happened in the year 2000. The year 2000 is the outbreak of the second intifada, of the Al-Aqsa intifada, in which close to, I think, 1,000 Israeli citizens were killed in suicide bombings. Eventually, the Sharon government started building the separation wall. That created a major shift in Israeli politics. People who had supported the Oslo Accords and believed in some kind of compromise decided the Palestinians, you can't deal with them, they want to kill us. And mind you, most of these attacks were orchestrated by Hamas. This is when Hamas becomes really radical. And so you can see a shift to the right in Israeli politics from the year 2000, and that has remained, and it's possible that what happened in October 7th will bring even a bigger shift to the right. And that is certainly a reflection of what you see. But one has to add something else to this, and that is that the Israeli parliamentary system is a system of coalitions, and that in the system, relatively small parties can have an enormous amount of influence on government policies because the coalition can depend on something like 10% of the electorate for its survival. If you add to that the fact that Netanyahu, who until the last cabinet always liked to keep some more moderate members of, or representatives of some more moderate parties in his coalition so that he could balance it, this time went for what is called in Israel a right government, all right government. The people there are all to his right, right? And he's doing it for a very simple reason. He's doing it because he's corrupt through and through, and he's afraid that if he loses his coalition, he could go to jail. He does not want to give us power. He actually said it just in a press conference a couple of days ago when he was asked, does he take any responsibility for what happened on October 7th? It was the biggest catastrophe in Israeli history since 1948. And he has refused to take any responsibility. He has refused to say that he would ever resign. He has even refused to say that there might be elections before the next elections are due. And so he went with these people simply because these were the only people who would go with him. No one else wanted to be in coalition with Netanyahu, who proved himself to be a dirty player, somebody you can never trust. So not Gantz, who is a very centrist person. No one agreed to be in coalition with him, and he had to go with this extreme right, which represents maybe 10 or 15% of the population.
But 60 seats in the Knesset?
Yes, of course.
That's what you need for a majority, right?
Yes, but most of the people in that coalition are not these extreme rightists. Over a third of the MKs who supported are from his party, from the Likud party, and the Likud party has all kinds of people. It's also moved to the right. It has all kinds of people, and then he has the ultra-Orthodox, and he has Shas, and Shas is the Mizrahi Orthodox party, and to them, instead of adding another party from the center, because the parties of the center would not go with him anymore, because he lied to them in the previous cabinet. He promised rotation as a prime minister with Gantz, and once the time for the rotation came, he said, no, I won't do it. I'm the prime minister, and forget it. I'm not leaving. And that was it. So obviously Gantz will never go with him again. So instead, he needed someone, and he took in people that no political leader would have ever taken. These people, look, I mean, we have to understand, they are Jewish supremacists. They are Jewish supremacists. These people are true racists. And they are now in positions of real power. The Minister of the Police and Interior Order, that's Ben-Gvir. He has huge impact. And the Minister of Finance, who is also a minister, they invented something, a minister within the Ministry of Defense. That's Smotrich. They have enormous power in the country, and they represent the real extreme right. That's an extraordinary moment in Israeli society, and everybody was warning about it. And they were warning during all the protests against the judicial overhaul that Israel was facing external danger because all its enemies, and Hamas certainly counts as one, as does Hezbollah, could see that the country is being torn apart, that reservists were saying, we will not serve because we don't want to erode democracy, our democracy, never mind the Palestinians who never had it, but our own Jewish democracy. They're taking it away from us. And he was not listening. And then October 7th happened. And still he's taking no responsibility for it. This is extraordinary. And it's not getting enough sort of attention, the fact that the man in charge of this is running a government that is both corrupt and incompetent. It was incompetent before, and its response to the war has been terrible. Most of the help for tens of thousands of displaced Israeli citizens who have had to leave their settlements, their towns and villages in the north because of Hezbollah attacks, and in the south because of the war in Gaza, are getting no help from the government. They're getting that help from volunteers who are the same people who were protesting against the government before October 7th. And the government is merely providing more and more funds to religious institutions, to yeshivot, because its own coalition partners are forcing it to do it, and Netanyahu has to do it, otherwise he will lose his coalition and as I said, face jail time.